After 6 reviews of nothing but negativity, I'm finally reviewing an episode I like! Woo! Today, we're going to be looking at a different show. You've probably heard of it. It's called The Sarah Jane Adventures and it's one of the best spin-offs ever made. Today, we'll be talking about the Series 4 episode, The Nightmare Man. Wait, I'm meant to be talking about Doctor Who? Well, what the fuck is this then? Seriously, when this episode first aired, I heard one of my friends, Dale, say that he's heard people call it a Nightmare Man ripoff. But at the time of me watching the episode, I hadn't seen the Nightmare Man, so I couldn't vouch for it. But after seeing the Nightmare Man, oh my god, Can You Hear Me is borderline plagiarism, what the fuck? Seriously, how can you blatantly rip off an episode of the Sarah Jane Adventures this much and expect to get away with it? And even if this episode wasn't a rip-off of the Nightmare Man, this episode was such a letdown. Because the trailers made this episode look so interesting. But it just... let's take a look and see. This episode does actually start quite well, with an interesting opening showing us these creatures with massive claws snatch people away. Unfortunately, this scene is ruined by poorly placed stock sound effects and shitty music. So by this series standards, we're off to a good start. Unfortunately though, they don't use this location to its full advantage, as it's just used for, surprise surprise, political messages. Oh, my favourite! After we see a reused shot from Arachnids in the UK of the TARDIS landing, the Doctor drops off my favourite companions. And I thought this could be really interesting, as we see in Fugitive it's implied when the companions aren't travelling with the Doctor, she goes off and looks for the Master to an obsessive degree. And then I had this daunting moment of realisation. The Doctor is so absolutely inconsistent this series, it's baffling. In Series 11, 13 is just a generic mix of 10 and 11 and she's boring as fuck, with her morality all over the place. But in this series she's either happy-go-lucky 13 that we all like, or darker, harsher and colder 13 that distances herself from her companions. This is annoying as fuck, because darker 13 is a lot better and is a lot more interesting to watch. And we could have explored darker 13 in this bit where she's by herself. It wouldn't even need to take away from the plot of the episode, because the TARDIS could have just taken us, like, off course to the set of this episode, and then she could be like, oh, have you taken me to where the Master is, or anything? Exploring what the Doctors are like without their companions is something the new series has always gotten right. It's not fully shown with 9 because he's always with Rose, but in the first episode you see that 9 is emotionally closed off and almost defeatist. And he's still scarred because of the Time War.
It's not true. I should know. I was there. I fought in the war. It wasn't my fault. Save your world. I couldn't save any of them.
We see with 10 that without his companions or someone to hold him back, we see the worst of his ego and god complex and all those insecurities and mistakes made over his whole tenure come to culminate in the waters of Mars. I never thought I'd use an example from Series 7, but 11 without companions is a lot darker and more likely to make mistakes, as shown in The Town Called Mercy. And 12 being on his own gave us one of the best episodes in the show's history, so... And what does 13 get? Nothing! This episode is proof that they were sort of trying to make an arc where 13 and her companions grow distant, but never take it far enough. And keep ignoring it in some episodes. But then again, we're like 5 minutes into this episode and I've already ranted, I'll stop now. We get some scenes with our lovely companions where we see their lives, basically to establish that the nightmares are starting soon. Yaz's scene is shit, and once again shows how weak her character is. Ryan's aren't much better.
Final seconds, he's done it. He's a legend. Ryan Sinclair, FIFA legend.
Fucking hell. And Graham is playing cards with his bus driver mates. Not gonna lie though, the editing is well done in this scene. Where we see Graham's visions were really fucking cool and they were trippy as fuck and they suit the tone of the episode really well. And it's a massive improvement from the 50-minute shit flick Whiplash that was Praxeus. The most interesting part of this episode is the Nightmare Man himself. I know that's not his name, but like... shut up. He has a really well done and creepy introduction and the visuals on him are just... what the fuck? But not bad what the fuck. Good what the fuck. I love it! He's one of the weirdest, creepiest villains from this era of the show, and I wish they made this story a two-part so we could see more of him. And for other reasons, but we'll get to that. However, the first nightmare isn't exactly anything special. In fact, it was fucking stupid. And At the ending, it's made to look even more stupid. When we enter the TARDIS, we get a pretty funny line from Graham.
Those planets might be.
You get me an A to Z of the universe, and I'll be able to stick my finger straight at... Oh, no, I've got no idea.
And after that, he has to use the TARDIS telepathic circuits.
Don't like it, you sure it's safe?
You trust me, don't you?
Have I got to answer that?
Why?
Which really just made me miss the Capaldi TARDIS, as it's shown so much more interestingly there. But this shot of the ship kinda makes up for it. It's fucking gorgeous. But then they take down the making up for it by showing us the inside of the ship, which looks terrible. Then Fingermaster 69 returns and fingers our companions. Yes, I am aware of what I just said. And not gonna lie, these nightmares are weak shit, man. Yaz's nightmare is fucking terrible, and the reveal later makes it so much worse. Ryan's is fucking awful, and it has the dregs in it! Graham's is the best of the three, no surprise there, as it was about his cancer returning. Despite this leading into the worst scene with Jodie as the Doctor, more on that later, this is a pretty good scene, and it was a surprise seeing Grace again. However, Bradley's performance is so flat in this scene, it makes this massive chilling bombshell feel a lot weaker than it should. It's a shame these nightmares are so weak, especially when you consider the Nightmare Man, the story this episode is ripping off, because the nightmares in that story are actually scary. By CBBC standards anyway. Clyde imagines that he's hated by Sarah Jane and stuck in a dead-end job. Ronnie has to face her anxiety and portray Sarah Jane, while also in a dream job. And Luke is trapped in an endless corridor and is told by his best friends and his own mum that they don't want him back. And not to even mention the beautiful story Listen from Series 8, where we see that the Doctor is afraid of the dark. Both these episodes do a much better job of establishing our main character's fears, but in this episode it's just done in a boring way. Even the Doctor doesn't get an interesting dream. It's just more cock-teasing of,
"Be afraid, Doctor. Because everything is about to change."
yeah, that. Fuck you. Then we get a scene between the Nightmare Man and the Doctor, and my god, he is awesome! I love how he's genuinely a match for the Doctor, yet presents himself so formally and calmly. I love how he doesn't have any ulterior motive as well. He just wants to fuck around. Very relatable. And his views on what nightmares are really interesting, and I never thought I would praise Chibnall era dialogue this much. Sadly, when the other Immortal is released, the stakes go higher, but she doesn't look threatening at all. She's too short, and next to Zelen, she just looks like she has a shitty wig on. Zelen has creepy tattoos and his general mannerisms make him look scary. She isn't scary. This series is having a constant issue of hiring people too short to be threatened. And I'm not saying shorter people can't be threatening, because Sylvester McCoy is really short, but he's extremely threatening. I don't know, it's probably just because he's a better actor. The animated section was good, I guess. It's just really boring exposition. After that, we see the Doctor retrieve her sonic screwdriver in the stupidest way possible. And it was at this moment I realised the last 35 minutes of setup I'd just seen was about to go to shit. Back with the Immortals isn't much better either, after we see the shot literally stolen from the Nightmare Man. They get confronted by the FAB! In the worst Deus Ex Machina since the Doctor falls. So after all that 35 minutes of interesting setup, the Doctor just uses a sonic on a ball, and that is it. I'm not even joking, that's how they resolve the whole thing. So all of the interesting things set up in this episode are fucking pointless. And then it just turns into a big reminder that it's Children's Mental Health Week. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with promoting that, but they should have just done an episode focused on one of the characters' issues. Take for example, we have an episode focused on where we explore Graham's fears of his cancer and how he overcame it. Have an episode focused on Ryan where they discuss his FIFA ego. Have a Yaz-centered episode. Hell, this series at one point promised more character for Yaz. And this is all we get? A piss poor attempt at making us feel bad for her? Done in the cheapest way possible? We could have explored her depression throughout her whole life and how travelling with the Doctor made her feel whole again. But no. What an absolute letdown. And then we get the most offensive scene of this whole show. While The Timeless Children shits on the character and ruins the whole message of the show, this episode shows us the Doctor ignoring Graham's worries about his fucking cancer. What the actual fuck? At this point in the show, I was trying so hard to force myself to like 13 because she was beginning to show promise. In episodes like Spyfall Part 2 and Fugitive of the Jadoon. Well, the ending of Spyfall. And then this fucking happens. Are you fucking serious? Could you actually imagine any other Doctor, even the meanest ones, doing something as fucking horrible as this? While the 6th Doctor is a sass god arsehole to everyone, he at least cares for Perry even if he does it in his own fucked up way. This scene is fucking insulting to everyone. And even when the Doctor themselves are worried or angry, they still reassure people and give them faith and hope. But 13 basically says, "Yeah, I'm too quirky and funny to help. Sorry, Grey mate, can't help you, lol." What?! Why would Graham even want to keep travelling with her? After that, if I was him, I'd just fucking leave. I have never been genuinely pissed off with the 13th Doctor before. Sure, she has shit dialogue, is cringy as fuck, and was the worst incarnation of this character. But I could never fully bring myself to despise her. But this scene is the fucking exception. Even the little scene of finally giving Ryan some fucking character wasn't enough to make for that horseshit scene. But then again, they do this thing with the Doctor and companions distancing. It ends up failing because it's not present in every episode. And then this episode ends. Absolutely fucking pathetic. So that was The Nightmare Man. I mean, can you hear me? What remains as the most disappointing episode of this era. Seriously, there was so much going for it. An interesting and wonderfully performed villain. Absolutely beautiful effects and an interesting concept for a Doctor Who episode. And then after all of that setup throughout the episode, it just goes nowhere and it's ruined by a shit ending. Making this episode absolutely worthless, as everything interesting goes nowhere. They wasted so much potential with this one. They could have made this episode so much better if they gave it a second part. Or, even if it didn't have a second part, actually take the interesting shit and make it go somewhere. While this episode is nowhere near as bad as Praxeus or Orphan 55, it is such a letdown to watch. And it's still filled with the Chibnall tropes, like too many characters to not care about, awful music, and bad acting.
Except for my boy Zelen, obviously.
Up next, the wasted potential of the Lone Cyberman Part 1.
Don't forget to click below and subscribe to the official TARDIS Team YouTube channel.